I know that I'm giving something away when I tell you that when I first heard Nelson's Love and Affection, that I literally jumped in my car and raced to the record store to buy the album. In the case of Nelson, one song was all I needed to hear to know that the rest of the album was going to be good. In any case, it was the intro to Love and Affection that was purely and simply one of the most recognizable and maybe happiest of the era. For better or for worse, and for the next 20 years, Nelson would be judged mostly on the merits of when they hit the scene, not what they hit the music scene with. Nelson made good music, but when you listen to some people talk about the post-80s era, you would never know it. The critics would have you think that their hair was too perfect, their smiles too bright, and their voices too good to be taken seriously. I recently got to talk to Gunnar Nelson and talk about his feelings regarding their meteoric rise to stardom, how grunge changed the game, and how Nelson persevered through it all.
Hello?
Hey, is Paul there?
Yes, this is Paul.
Paul, it's Gunnar Nelson. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you so much for calling.
Hey, thank you. I'm sorry I'm 10 minutes behind. The interviews went a little long this morning.
Oh, no worries. I know how it goes. I'm probably somewhere in the middle of that long list of calls.
No. You're in the 714. Where do you live?
I'm in Orange County, California.
Yeah, no, totally cool. I mean, I grew up in L.A. and Laguna, so which part?
Oh, sweet. Yeah, Brea.
Oh, nice. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. I can get the mental picture now. I'm calling you from Nashville.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have a sister in Nashville.
Oh, great.
Cool. And I guess let's just get started so, you can get on with your day, too.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Let's do it. So what are we going to talk about today?
I actually want to talk about everything. I kind of want to go through the history of the band and go all the way through, probably everything that you've talked about, but hopefully I do it a little differently.
Sounds great. Let's go.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, you guys made After the Rain about 20 years ago, and I just wanted you to paint a picture of what that was like, that whirlwind of kind of getting that success very early. Were you guys ready for that attention and stardom, even considering that you came from a family of entertainers?
Wow, good question. I don't think anything can prepare anybody for that kind of success. I mean, really, honestly, it was. It's hard to describe. I mean, thinking back on it, it was kind of like New Kids on the Block level success without the aid of Disney.
Right.
So that was really impressive. I don't know. We've been playing music since we were 6 years old, literally, and playing the LA clubs professionally from the time we were 12.
Right.
Got a record deal when we were 19. And released at 21 and had our first number one at 22. But really, honestly, there's nothing that can prepare you from doing 3 or 4 nights a week playing the LA club scene to playing at the Universal Amphitheater-sized places overnight. And that's basically what happened. I mean, what really worked for us, to be honest, was going out and doing some MTV VJing.
Right.
People got to see me and Matthew before the record was even released. And and then we released the album and stuff, and the same places, the same shopping malls that we would shop at when we were teenagers in LA. The next thing you know, we're closing them down because there are mall riots and stuff. And the only thing that had changed was being seen on TV and videos. That's it.
Right. So one of the things I always remember about this band in particular is that you guys did definitely, especially with that first album, it was like a signature sound. When Love and Affection started, there was just there was an intro that you were like Nelson. I mean,
right.
and it was very, very much. You could say this. I mean, in a way, it was a compliment to you guys because you could hear that and go, "That's Nelson," as much as you could hear the beginning of some other song and go, "That's Van Halen," or "That's whatever."
Basically, that's what we wanted to do. I mean, our motto when we first came out was, "Love us or hate us, you're going to know who we are."
Right.
We were making our debut, and of course, we were doing things contrary to the way most of our contemporaries were. I mean, Nelson was never really intended to be a heavy metal band at all.
Right.
We were a hard pop band. I mean, we grew up, like I said, playing all those LA clubs, on the same stages, even though we were, a lot younger with the Romantics and the Go-Go's and the Bangles and the Knack and, all those skinny tie bands and stuff. That's what we kind of grew up, emulating and trying to compete with songwriting-wise.
Right.
And I do think that it was super easy for Geffen, our label, when we first came out, to market us to 2 very specific markets. We never actually did a single interview review for one teen magazine.
Right.
But that didn't stop Geffen from going, oh, yeah, you teen girls, rock on. We're going to do all the Tiger Beats and Teen Beats and all that stuff. And they sold all our pictures to all of those magazines. And, I mean, that was, cool and all. But and then the other thing, the big magazine of the day was Metal Edge magazine.
Right.
And so, they put us by default next to Warrant and Winger and Poison and Slaughter and all these other bands who really honestly wouldn't tour with us back in the day because they didn't think that we were real. They didn't think we were tough enough or rock enough or whatever they thought. And we wanted to go out on a big tour, opening up for one of those bands that was more established. But since no one would take us out, the only thing we could do, because we didn't have a choice, was actually headline.
Right.
And so we went out and did our own headlining tour of theaters and sold all of those out, did about 80 theaters coast to coast, which was great. And, it was really, honestly, it was kind of a struggle from jump because, because we come from the family that we come from and we had the image that we had and all that stuff. It was kind of like we've always been made to feel guilty until proven innocent for some weird reason.
Right.
Where, being a son of, I think, my dad had the same kind of onus on him. But,
right.
The one equalizer that we always had is that we started out writing songs.
Right.
From the time we were real young. And a lot of those other bands on the Sunset Strip back in the day, they had everything going for them. They had strong image. They had a strong following. They had all the cool gear. And they had no songs.
Right.
And it was weird. You go out and you see a show, and maybe one song was kind of catchy, and that was it. But, we were raised to be songwriters first and foremost. So when you were to listen to one of our songs, again, back to that philosophy, love us or hate us, you're going to know who we are.
Right.
We wanted it to be recognizable from the first 12-string guitar lick in Love and Affection. We wanted you to know that it was us.
Right.
And have its own very unique signature sound. I owe a lot of that to Mark Tanner, who
Right.
co-produced the first record with us.
Right, right.
He came from more of an artist background, and he sat us down and had a talk with us before we first started going in and making demos for Geffen, and he said, what you got to think, your competition is no longer what's hot on the Sunset Strip or what's playing in the clubs.
Right.
Your competition is what's going on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, what's going on in the top 10.
Right.
And why should a listener, why should a fan, so to speak, spend their hard-earned dollars to buy your record when they could buy anyone else's record? Why would they pay good hard-earned money to come see your show when they can see any other show out there? What's going to make you unique and special and different? So that's the way we approach the sound, and most people were coming from more of like that metal sort of blues background. We came from a folk background, growing up with our dad's Stone Canyon Band and Linda Ronstadt and Jackson Browne and the Eagles and that whole Southern California thing. And that's basically what the Nelson sound really was a great amalgam of folk and arena rock. And
Right.
that's what we've always done.
Right. So you definitely sort of subscribe a little bit, at least, to the idea that the lack of respect had more to do with lineage than sound, so to speak.
Well, I think so. It's funny is that any bad press that we have ever gotten in our career, they've all, like any bad reviews, they've all been personal attacks.
Right.
No one has ever attacked the music. It's always been some, kind of like some reviewer thinking they were being funny and saying something for the first time and making some comment about the family or some comment about the hair or some comment about the image
Right.
or something, but they've never been able to slag the music. So to me, that's a tremendous compliment, and I feel a lot better about, of course there's going to be a backlash. We sold 5 million records to a bunch of teenage girls who
Right.
had no idea who Rick Nelson or Ozzy and Harriet were.
Right.
But there's going to be some sort of a backlash. But to me, I felt better after I read an interview or an article that John Fogerty had written for my father. They were, I guess it was, Rolling Stone was doing the 100 most influential people in rock history.
Yeah.
And our dad came in at like 89 or something like that, which was really nice. But Fogerty was who wrote the article, and he summed up the article by saying, for a lot of people to have to admit that Ricky Nelson had the talent he really had would be like having to admit that the prom queen had a brain.
Right, right. Yeah.
And, I guess my dad went through that quite a bit too, and he was never really concerned about, the critical press or anything. He was raised as an entertainer. That's his job. He
Right.
comes from a family that's been doing it for 120 years. So it depends on what kind of, what your what your motivation is. I mean, for me, it's always been about entertaining folks. But I can't lie to you. This new record that we just put out is getting stellar reviews all over the world, and it's really a first for me. And it does feel pretty good to actually be able to kind of like cater to people on both the critical level and the fan level. It's nice for me as somebody who worked really hard on it. I have to say that I actually kind of enjoy it for a change.
Do you feel like that you've sort of now that you're far enough removed from it in a lot of ways, do you feel like it's sort of like I heard an interview with Duran Duran once, where they said that when they started out, it was sort of the same thing, that the teenage fans were screaming and yelling so loud that they couldn't hear themselves play, and then when they sort of had their second comeback, they said that there was this really weird feeling of the audience actually listening to them. Do you feel like that's what it is now, that they're finally like you're like putting music out there and they're finally going, oh, hey, this is pretty good, because they're actually listening versus like.
Well, I mean, I suppose so too. I mean, look, we've got a new live record coming out here pretty soon called Perfect Storm, and man, you can barely hear the music. You can really hear what 20,000 chicks actually sound like at the top of their lungs. It's pretty interesting.
But I just mean from a critical point of view. You know what I mean? I mean, like you said, it's very easy for people to attack music, like especially with you guys, because they could throw out a whole bunch of things, like maybe you didn't earn it. You come from obviously your father is this person and your grandfather's that person, so of course you're going to be a star.
Well, I mean, I suppose. I mean, we got turned down by every label in Los Angeles